Today we're going to be talking about a game that frankly I wish I had known about before it had been out for 2 years, but today we're going to talk about My Friendly Neighborhood, a puppet slash mascot horror, survival horror shooter game. Really has a fresh take on the genre that I really enjoyed. In My Friendly Neighborhood, you play as the main character Gordon, who is a man's gruff engineer type of guy that is tasked by his boss. He works with MFN Productions to shut off a broadcast array for a once well-loved puppet show that seems to be over broadcasting the news slot for the news. The news now, in this day and age, is going to be newly broadcasting about the war that is going on, or that did go on, and is now turned to more of a violent, drama-based news broadcast. And this, in turn, has removed the puppet show. When you get there, you find out that the puppets are in fact sentient, and apparently in this world that's just normal, because you find some little notes here and there that talk about how the puppets act and how they interact with the puppets and how they're just, you know, they're there, they talk, they do things, they play games, they hit people with irons, things of that nature, you know, normal day-to-day stuff. You are tasked with turning off their TV show that they have worked so hard on for so many years, and they are there simply to help educate kids. It's very Sesame Street in the way that it is just teaching kids right from wrong and teaching them their alphabet and fun songs and wholesomeness, and we're giving the kids a nice place to be in the evening and teach them some good, wholesome things that let them turn into decent human beings in the process. So you are going to be immediately tasked with turning off this broadcast because it is interrupting what people like now, which is all the drama. The puppets don't care for this, of course, and so they are seen as enemies in this light, and you are to turn that broadcast off to get the news back to its normal time slot. The gameplay in this game is going to be ripped directly from Resident Evil. Is going to feel very, very nostalgic for those who have played the original games and some of the newer games because it is in first person, but it does also feature, because of that, limited saves that are tied behind having tokens to spend on them, and it is going to have an inventory system that is those blocks that you so love to organize your inventory and make sure it all actually fits in the little rectangle that is your bag. Another thing that we have either come to love or tolerate, depending on the game in this kind of genre, is the puzzles. The puzzles in this game were genuinely pretty fresh. I enjoyed them a lot. It has some of your typical, like, oh, fuse boxes. It's got some safe codes. It's got, you know, like, fill in the spaces. It's got some find the blocks, find the map, you know, things like that. But they all kind of have a nice amount of hints to them, nice context clues, nothing that's too difficult to navigate, especially if you are picking up your maps and things of that nature. It's like, oh, if you have something that seems relevant to music, there would be a trumpet polish, and so you would go to the music studio. Fucking trumpet polish in the music studio! That kind of thing, right? So it's not easy, you know, like some of them are kind of challenging. It does require you to be very thorough, but they were generally pretty easily obtained in the sense that if you look at the context clues, you do your research, you look around hard enough, you'll find it. You're not going to struggle that bad. I am not very good at these puzzles, like these types of puzzles. They often, if you watch my streams, which, hey, you know, plug the stream, watch my streams, you'll see that there are a lot of times, every single survival horror game I play, I get stuck on one puzzle for like a half hour. It happens every single game, most streams. But that means I got through it relatively easily, so you should too, right? The gameplay is fun. It is pretty fresh in the sense of the genre of survival horror. Mascot horror obviously has not done too many things like a Resident Evil style before, at least that I have played, so this is pretty fun for me. It's not the typical quote-unquote walking simulator and you are just trying to survive because you can't fight back type of thing. But it also does get a little tedious at times. This is really the only negative note I can give this game, is just the fact that the health pool of the enemies seems to vary greatly. Some puppets, and it doesn't seem tied to any particular type of puppet. None of them are necessarily stronger. Some of them are faster, it seems. But they have just random HP, or you do random damage, one of the two, because sometimes it takes 2 hits of your wrench, sometimes it takes 15. She's dangerous! Holy shit! Holy shit! Oh my god, is it gonna take a... It took 20 bullets! Same with the bullets, or the alphabet, whatever you're using. It's really the only negative I can give this game. Overall, enjoyed the gameplay. Overall, enjoyed the overarching narrative. And now I'm going to kind of break down some more fun bits of the narrative that really dragged me into this game and got me to like it so much. I held off on watching any theory videos.
But, you know, it's just a theory.
Are you being paid by the word?
I didn't watch anybody else's opinion. I saw no gameplay. This is raw, personal opinion on what's going on. So I'm going to tell you about it. So one of the things that this game does really, really well is the kind of item collection lore notes, right? So you find a little newspaper and it has an article. For instance, there's one about a war story. And this war story talks about how there was a soldier and his troop that get trapped in a mine and they need to get out. And when they get out, it starts crumbling. The mine starts collapsing. And so this guy, they find the bracing beam and he gets up underneath it and in some superhuman feat of strength, holds it up just long enough for everybody to get out. He gets crushed and killed. Then obviously the article portrays this as he's a war hero, he's the best, he gave his life. You know, it's like, oh, he's a hero, but it's only one guy and he saved all these other people, so it's worth it, right? And then the game talks about, like, Gordon, your main character, talks about like who could even bring themselves to do that. You know, who could just give their life for someone else's life? Like it's a hard thing to understand, and it is. And then immediately you will go progress in the game and you'll find something like this has happened. This takes me to the west basement. Okay, that's where I need to go. West basement. So we're not going to the west basement. Yeah. You find a Norman crushed. And mind you, keep this in mind, I call it a Norman because there are these several characters that are the more humanoid puppets, and they are always addressed as a Norman, more of a noun than a proper noun, right? It's a simple noun. It's just a person, a thing, a puppet, a Norman. And Norman is always in these tragic events when you go around the game. He's slammed into he falls out seemingly dead from a ceiling vent. Just someone shoved him a lock. He gets like crushed in a bathroom stall. Oh. He gets crushed underneath the collapsing tunnel. And see, that's what I'm saying though. It's telling you how this one Norman doesn't really matter because there's so many Normans. He's just a person. He's just a Norman. He's just a soldier. He can be replaced. And so when it shows you this exact event kind of portrayed as it happened because there's a bunch of other puppets right outside of that tunnel. There's more puppets outside of a tunnel after you find the tunnel collapsed and you find Norman smashed underneath there. So Norman gave his life, right? That's the image portrayal. And then you can't get through that tunnel anymore. Mine collapsed. So it gives you the imagery. It gives you the narrative. It does a very good job of that. I really enjoyed that part of it. One part I also really enjoyed was Ricky, the sock puppet. He compares Gordon to the cops, to the detective busting in with a gun and blasting everybody, right? Because that's what they see on TV is these detectives and these cops and, you know, the police brutality and things of that nature. And then he compared Gordon to that and to the war.
Don't say that, Ricky.
Say what?
Don't talk about the war.
Why not?
Oh.
Just saying. Seems like exactly the sort of place you got.
Oh my God. And then Gordon immediately was like, don't talk about the war. Don't mention the war. Giving that he also has trauma from this war as an adult. It's not just the kids that are being traumatized with the war, right? It's the adults. They're also traumatized. And then he immediately shoots Ricky. Horrible irony. But still a very potent little piece of a narrative. It's very well told. Something else that I would mention is that the puppet monologues, they do monologue, right? They're just around, they're just yapping, for a lack of a better word. They are just talking, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's just a lot of words jumbled up. They're like, oh, the alphabet? I don't know the alphabet. Oh, wait, is this the alphabet? It's like B for blastocyst or G for gangrene. If they start saying things, it's kind of weird.
Take your clothes as red and separate all of their parts into little piles based on color.
Right? And they start talking about stories like a Norman I heard at one point was talking about like, oh, when I get angry, I bashed my friend's head in, basically. I kicked his head. And it was just like violent outbursts. And so it's these kids are seeing all these traumatic events and hearing about all this violence on TV because their show is canceled and the show is not there to teach them what's morally correct because the parents are not doing it. And, you know, it's whatever. And so they don't have that safe place to learn how to treat others and how to be treated and things of that nature. And so then you hear these puppets just kind of talking about how they beat up other puppets or their friends or, you know, whatever. And I think what it's doing is it's likely intended to show the effects of televised war and the effects of televised crime and violence and drama and all this stuff. And these kids see this stuff and they don't understand it. You know, if you see a kid at the mall, he drops an F-bomb, it's some awful thing. But the thing is like that kid doesn't know what he's saying. He's just mimicking. Usually when a parent or a loved one or a close relative said something, they don't know what they're saying. They just said it. And so I think that's what it's doing is it's just giving you that bit of information that these kids seeing all this televised war and seeing all this televised trauma and being exposed to the war and the world's traumas, it's having this direct effect on them. And so it's just kind of messing with them mentally and developmentally. It's kind of screwing them up. And so it does a good job talking about that. And then with the larger puppets, it's a similar thing to where you kind of help them deal with their traumas. It's interesting. You have this option, these big scary puppets that seem to be like the level bosses of the areas. They seem to be more misunderstood than anything. You know, you have Pearl, the big destructive bird. Watch out for Pearl. She'll crush things, blah, blah, blah. And it's actually just like, she's just big. She's just a big kid, right? You always have that, like, growing up, the big kids. You got, oh, remember, you're bigger than other people. You got to be careful. You got to be gentle. And then they end up hurting somebody on accident and become portrayed as this monster bully of a kid, when really they just grew up a little quicker than others physically, and they don't know how to handle it. They got to be taught how to handle it and learn that. And then you have Ray, who is he wants to be a mechanic. He wants to fix everything, but then he gets frustrated because he doesn't know how to fix everything. And so then when he tries to fix something and it breaks or doesn't work, he gets mad, he starts hitting stuff, right? That's a very juvenile reaction to something not working. It's a very lacking development action, you know, to something not working for them. And then you have, you know, Ricky. Ricky seems to be the only real cognitive one. He can speak in full sentences that make sense. He can kind of actually dialogue with the main character. Not really sure. I think it's just because he is the front facing. He is more like the mind of the writer, right? So he's more of a narrator, host type character, and so he can actually make these dialogues and make these little callbacks to, hey, you're like the cops, hey, you're like the war, I don't like that. You know, he actually is starting to understand. He's getting that frontal lobe development going on. He's got that reasoning. Very, very interesting to go from the sock puppet that pops up in the desk, and now he's talking to you about the comparisons of the war. And then finally you have Goblet, who Goblet really doesn't know much. She is a character that just eats everything, right? Like, haha, oh, there's a plate of food. Oh, they gobbled it up, they made a mess. Haha, you know, very slapstick, very simple humor, whatever. But then they see later on, and this is a bit of a spoiler, you can help them by first harming them. And you show them footage of the war, right? You show them more footage in the theater, and then they come in, they sit down, and they see Gordon, the character, actually says, Are they depressed? You know? And then you go down there and you talk to him and you kind of share this little story about something you saw on the TV and how it felt so real and how it felt like how it affected them. And you kind of help Goblet here, this meatball of a puppet, process their depression and their trauma from seeing this stuff. It's just very fulfilling. You know, the story is very wholesome at the end and it's very fulfilling. And I love the narrative. Narrative is phenomenal. It's put together so well. It's very thoughtful. The map is thoughtful. The events are thoughtful. And the game is just fantastic. I'm upset that it took me 2 years to play this game. Nobody mentioned it to me. I never saw it. It took Game Pass posting it and throwing it on my home screen on my Xbox to go, oh, hey, this is a game. And then it takes this rated E title and really talks about a lot of really adult, really serious topics, while also being kind of scary, right? Kind of having this over sense of dread, and it's got these jump scares, and it's really good. I didn't know about it for 2 years, man. And you know, mascot horror it's hard sometimes, right? Because mascot horror, it can be M, it can be E, it can be T, it can be anywhere in between, because it's these, you know, puppets and stuff, and it's these mascots and these animatronics, right? If you're a Five Nights fan, I mean, it doesn't seem all that scary most of the time, and it always tries really hard to have this dark underlying lore, because unless you were one of the kids who was terrified of Chuck E. Cheese, you know, it just doesn't really land on its own. It has to have some kind of dark underlying something to really get you to pay attention and be like, oh wow, this is actually really scary. It has to create the horror, because it doesn't just have it by being a freaky long-haired, you know, mess of a creature. It actually just has to make you scared of it, which I think is why I like the genre so much, because it's really developed into that. Five Nights having kind of the, you know, it kind of paved the way for a lot of his stuff. And there's a lot of cheap knockoffs. There's an abundance of them now. Not all of them are good. This is a good one. This is a very good one. Just play it, okay? I know I spoiled a little bit. I hope you didn't care too much about that part. But if you haven't played it, play this game. This game is fantastic. It deserves the support. It deserves to do well. If it hadn't done well already, I really don't know. It has good reviews, but I think more people should play it. It's very good. So go play it. Tell me what you think about the game. Tell me after you play it. Come back to this video. Tell me what you thought about the game. And I will see you when I find another gem. All right? LT is just flipping